Hi, I'm Eileen of Softus, and this is a movement ed video, and this one is part 2 of shoulder pain when throwing. Whether you're throwing a football, whether you're throwing a baseball, whether you're throwing a frisbee, could even be when you're swinging a golf club, but maybe I'll do a different series for that one because, you know, people look for what their problems are. So, and I want you to find this. So, part 1 talked about a body part. If you didn't watch it, you really do need to, because that could be your culprit. Stop beating up the victim if that is your culprit, right? The second area that could potentially be the culprit are the hips. Now, bear with me here. I'm going to explain this a little bit anatomy here, okay? Your shoulder has 18 muscles that directly impact shoulder function. One of them is the latissimus dorsi, and the latissimus dorsi starts low back, comes up, you know, the guys, the bodybuilder men, you know, when they do this and it kind of looks like a cobra here, that's your latissimus dorsi. Well, that comes up and attaches to the front of the arm bone, right at the top of the humeral head here. And so what happens is if your hips are not playing nice, if you've got something going on pelvis-wise or even low back, then what can happen is it's really the pelvis, because it's the sacrum that gets torqued, which is the pelvis part, right? Back hips. It can make that lat dorsi be in a little bit of a spasm. When you pull on a muscle, it kind of creates a tug of war, a low-level tug of war, and the muscle sort of pulls back. It doesn't like being pulled on. And you won't really notice there's pain in the lat dorsi, but you'll notice shoulder pain when you're repetitively doing something, right? Because that muscle is kind of pulling and sort of depressing the humeral head just enough where it's not in good alignment when you're repetitively doing things. And you can inject it and heat it and ice it and stretch it and exercise it and surgically alter it. But until you stop the lat dorsi spasm from, you know, abnormally pulling, right? So how do you do that? Well, you can go and see a really good skilled manual therapist who's trained in muscle energy technique and strain and counter strain, and they can reset everything for you. Or you can try training your hips so that they work properly. Now, there's other reasons as well that the hips can impact shoulder, and let me explain. When you go to throw something, I don't just go, right? That's not going to go very far. That's like a 2-year-old who's learning how to throw, and they're standing there and they just kind of throw it and it falls, right? Doesn't make it to you. But if you want that ball to have any kind of a distance, any kind of a trajectory, you've got to wind up first, right? You've got to load your muscles and create some tensional energy in those muscles so that you can unload that energy that you just loaded and release that ball and have it go the distance you want it to go, right? So when you're doing all that loading, guess which muscles are really building and loading the power so that when you release the ball, it's not your shoulder. Your shoulder is not where the power is sitting. The power is in the hips. So let's make sure the hips are loading and unloading properly. So if I'm right-handed, and I go to throw something, right? I'm going to wind up first. I'm going to load. Yeah, this part of my body's loading, but guess what else is really loading? Here, right? That my pelvis is loading. So right now, this hip is loading external rotation. This hip is loading an internal rotation. And it's kind of like winding up a clock, right? Those of you old enough to remember, we used to have to wind our watches and you had to wind your alarm clock. You wind it up so that it can release, right? The energy needed to keep it running. Same thing with the hips. I want to wind them up. I want to eccentrically load those muscles. I want them to lengthen under tension to build the energy needed so that when I release that power that's coming through here, I mean, it's a physics thing. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when I do this, I really am going to have that beautiful push. I'm pushing through. I got ground reaction force. I got gravity. Got all this fabulous stuff going on. but it's also that I can release that ball with power and accuracy and just really let it go. So you want those hips working, and you want them being really good, especially in the transverse plane. You want them to really be good in rotating. Now we've also got, there's a little extension and a little flexion going on. You want to make sure that power source is right, but this isn't an exercise class, but I will teach you a couple of things that may help improve that rotation. All right. So one of them is so if we're going to do external rotation, if I pretend my feet are kind of like the letter L, I can turn and then come back. Turn and then come back. And you can see that foot stays forward. This foot is at a 90-degree angle. I'm bending my knee because I'm putting weight into it. I want to shift from this leg to this leg, right? And really, really build some power there. And you can even go down and reach knee height, reach ankle height, reach floor height. Really go for it and really load that hip that you're turning into, but this hip has to control and stabilize you as you go here and you come back. So both hips are working, but you're going to feel it more in this hip, but they're both working. You can't work one hip, right? You're always working both hips no matter what you're doing because of that equal and opposite reaction thing that goes on. It's physics. Can't change physics, okay? So, that's why they call them laws of physics. All right. Internal rotation. All right, this is external rotation of this hip, and this is coming back. Relatively speaking, it's internal rotation, right? Now, when you go to release a ball, you're like this, right? So let's make sure that we can do internal rotation here. Or I'm sorry, this is external because that's going that way. My body's going this way, and this is internal. So let's get external on this side as well. Same thing, just do the same exercise. Just do this and really load and come back. Do this, load and come back, right? You want to really get that, my feet are a nice, I'm not right next to my foot. I'm back, right? It's a back step with a twist, but you're loading so that you're really getting those hips loaded. Now this is great for external rotation. Let's do internal rotation as well. Let's make sure the hips are doing internal nicely. Internal is when you have a nice 90-degree angle from one foot to the other. And you want to be careful because, you don't want to twist. You don't want to lock that knee and twist on it and hurt yourself, right? So you keep it soft. And I'm going to step in and I'm going to reach down. And I'm going to step in and I'm going to reach down. So now my left hip is really learning how to internally rotate, okay? And I'm loading. And then, of course, the same way. This foot's going to do the same thing. I'm going to step in and internally rotate. Step in. So that foot that's moving, that knee is bending, but you want to be careful because if you're lacking any internal rotation, if you're lacking any external rotation, you might feel some discomfort. So if your body doesn't like one of the positions, do the position it does like. And what happens, because you're training both hips when you do this, you may find after a couple days, you can do the side it didn't like, right? You may reset something in there because, again, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But that's another culprit. When you go to throw, if you have shoulder pain, it may have nothing to do with your shoulder and everything to do with your hips, one or both. So isn't it important to know that? And you can check it out for yourself. Go to my Move Without Pain private club. There's a 3-plane assessment video on there. You can assess your whole body, 3-plane function. It's free. It's a free membership. There's a movement education video there. There's a geek corner. There's all kinds of stuff. It's all free. Go check it out. See how you like it. But just know that I really hope that these YouTube videos are really helping people. My goal is so that everyone on the planet can move without pain, age without decline, and have lifelong well-being. All right, I'll see you next time. Part 3 is coming.